errors. Okay, there were errors made in the building and design of that dam, and that's really what prompted the legislature to create licensing laws, at least for engineers, and that started in 1929. Next slide. So here's a picture of what the dam looked like before, a little bit of information. Again, you can see fairly big. Next slide. And this is what it looked like afterwards. And so this is really what precipitated licensing in California. And then eventually other states are also on board with the same idea. Next slide. So what does it mean for you? Well, I want to emphasize one thing. When we talk about getting your PE license, what it means to the public and to other engineers in part is that you are minimally competent. Notice I stressed minimally competent because that's all we're testing for. We're not trying to figure out whether you're the best engineer ever. We're just trying to figure out if you meet the lowest bar that we've established. Once you have that PE, one advantage is it allows you to practice independently. That means you can be in responsible charge, do all the work without necessarily having to report to somebody else. Now, as young engineers, once you come out of school, you're obviously going to be working for a licensed engineer under their supervision. That's how you get to do engineering without a license. If you do it any other way, it's illegal, and we at the board, if we find out, we come after you and we discipline you. So that's our role on the board. For civil engineers, and I know most of you are, the PE has additional meaning. For most of us in civil engineering, if you want to get to higher levels at the middle and later ended points of your career, you're going to need that PE. For example, in my company, to be a senior project manager, we prefer that you be licensed so that you can take responsibility for the plans you're working on. There are ways to do it without it. I'm not saying that that's not possible if there's another engineer around who is the responsible charge engineer, but if you want to grow, you're going to need it. And even in places where you may not need it early in your career, it can influence your compensation. There are certainly, in public sector, there are jobs where the descriptions will tell you that if you meet those jobs, you will be classified as one level, and your salary range is A, if you do not have a PE, and B, if you do have a PE. So those are the reasons why you should be concerned about licensure and trying to make sure that you're on the path to getting there. The one thing I can tell you, in the years I've been on the board listening to folks who come before us, the most common thing we hear is a regret for not taking the exams early because it gets harder to take them and pass them as the longer you wait. And so the idea that you will somehow do it later in your life when the time is right generally does not work out that way. Next slide, please. So what is the Board for Professional Engineers, Land Surveyors, and Geologists? Sorry, my cat likes to walk across the keyboard. The board was created, as I said, in 1929, following the St. Francis Dam failure. We are comprised of 15 members. 8 of those are public members, meaning they are not engineers or land surveyors or geologists. 7 of them are practitioners. Currently, we have positions for a civil engineer, structural engineer, electrical engineer, mechanical engineer, land surveyor, and geologist. Those are always there. I am the guy filling that slot for traffic engineer, but that really is a slot designed for all of our title acts, as we call them, and I'll explain that in a second. The board staff has various units, including enforcement, exams, licensing, and outreach. And we've given you some of the names of our leads for the engineering and professional geologists. So those are the 4 registrars. These are the 4 people who look at applications for license and determine if the experience requirements are met or not. And they have help from other people looking at other parts of that, but the experience is the key part that we have them on board for. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we have several types of licenses in California, and this is, some other states have things like this, but we are kind of unique. We discipline by what we call the practice acts. These are civil, electrical, and mechanical. And what this means is you cannot do any of those, what's considered those areas of engineering, without a license or under the supervision of a license. So if you were to go out after school and start doing some work in say, civil engineering, without having someone who's a licensed engineer supervising your work, you would be in violation of the law. And if it was reported to the board, we would be put in a position of having to investigate and then potentially discipline. The second type of license we have is called a title authority. So that's for geotechnical and structural. And that's something I'm guessing several of you here might be interested in, given the nature of your group. What that means is, in order to get, yes, you will get a copy of the slides. So you will get a geotechnical and a structural only after you've already gotten your civil. So it requires two steps. First, get the civil, then you can get the title authority. The title acts, which are those 11 or so on the far right side, I think, yeah, right, my right side at least, are licenses that we give that give you the title only. The interesting thing is, in that category, in those categories, you can practice those in the state of California, and we cannot discipline you. It's not illegal. So I'm a registered traffic engineer in California. I'm also civil, so I've got dual license. But basically, if one of you wanted to go out and do a traffic study, you could. No one can say you can't. But you cannot claim to be a traffic engineer. Only I get to use that title. And that's the difference with those title acts. They do not have the disciplinary aspect if someone practices in those areas without the appropriate act. All right. And there are references to the to what terms you can use, how you can refer to yourself as an engineer or registered engineer, professional engineer. So those are restricted titles as well. Next slide, please. All right, so that's sort of the introduction into the licensure. And I'm going to turn it over to Natalie at this point. She's going to take on the rest of this and hopefully get to the more exciting parts for you guys. And I'll be back at the end and keeping an eye on questions as well.
Thank you, Dr. Q. So now we're going to dive into kind of the timeline for professional licensure, as well as the specific requirements for licensure. So this is a very general timeline. Looking at starting in your senior year of college, this is when you should start focusing on registering for that FE exam, which we'll talk about in a minute. That's that Fundamentals of Engineering exam. So that is really the first step towards professional licensure. And we're going to kind of move our way through this timeline, talking first about the FE exam and then talking about the PE exam and touching on what qualifies for education and experience. I'm not going to talk about the seismic and survey exams today, or the application process in too much depth. So if that's something of interest, you feel free to email me, or I could do another presentation later. But today's presentation is mostly focused on the FE and PE exams. So the first thing that we're going to talk about are these national exams. And these two exams, the Fundamentals of Engineering exam and the Principles and Practice of Engineering exam, these are required for licensure in all disciplines. These are national exams. They are developed by NCEES, and they are administered by Pearson VUE. So the California board does not develop or administer these exams, but we accept them for professional licensure. So the first exam we're going to talk about is that Fundamentals of Engineering exam. And as I said, this is something that you want to start looking at taking right around your senior year or close to graduating with your bachelor's degree. So the fundamentals of engineering exam, the FE exam, it's the first step in the process to becoming a licensed engineer. It's designed for recent graduates or graduates who are close to finishing their ABET accredited engineering program. There are 7 different disciplines that you can select to take for this exam. And it doesn't matter which of the 7 you take. You just need to pass one of the 7. And the next slide has those on there, so I'll speak a bit more. It is a computer-based exam. It is offered year-round. It's 110 questions. You have 6 hours to take the exam, and you register and pay directly to NCEES. So the 7 different disciplines are shown on the screen, and we've provided a handout that has the disciplines and the exam specifications in more detail that you will have provided to you. But you can take any of these 7 disciplines for the FE exam. So regardless of whether you want to get licensed as a civil engineer, you can choose to take the environmental FE exam, or perhaps you started your education in mechanical engineering and switched over. And when you look at the exam specifications, you feel more confident with the mechanical. That's fine. The discipline does not matter for the FE exam. Here we have some of the FE exam specifications shown on the screen. These are for the civil exam. So if you choose to take the FE civil exam, these are going to be the topics that are tested on. And the numbers are the number of questions that will be within that area. Civil engineers, I'm going to go back a bit. Civil engineers typically take the FE civil exam or the FE other disciplines. And the other disciplines is more of a general engineering. It doesn't dive too deep into any specific discipline. So you'll see more of your statics, dynamics, materials, your fluid mechanics, your thermo, those types of topics. Whereas the civil exam then dives into your structural, geotech, transportation, and so on. The FE exam is computer-based, and so what this means is that there is only one reference handbook available. This is not an open book exam. You will have an FE reference handbook that will be available electronically during the exam as a searchable PDF. And it is also available for free download with a My NCEES account. So if you take anything out of this presentation and as an action item, it would be to register for a My NCEES account. And I do have a slide in a bit with the link on there, but there's a lot of information on the exams through a My NCEES account. You only need an email address, and you will be able to download that reference handbook for free and start becoming familiar with it. There are also discipline-specific exam specifications that are available on the NCEES website. We've included these as a handout as well, but they dive a bit deeper into what topics are going to be tested on. And so it's a great tool for not only selecting which exam you want to take, but also for studying for that exam. NCEES also offers practice exams for each of the FE exams. These have 100 questions. They provide the solutions, and AIT, that's alternative item types, which we'll have a slide on later as well. So these practice exams are a great way to study for the exam, to get used to the type of questions that are going to be on the exam. And then NCEES also has a deal that if you register for the FE exam before graduation or within 6 months after you graduate, then you get a 50% discount on the PDF version of the practice exam. So this is that reference handbook. It's about 500 pages. And I will, in a couple slides, break away from the presentation and show you where you can download this. I will show you what this looks like, but this is the one reference handbook that is available to you for this exam. So 500 pages, it's a lot of information. It's mostly equations, charts, graphs, and figures. There's not example problems. And so this is a great resource, not only for taking this exam, but something that you can use in college. You can use it in, at work if you're looking for specific equations or charts or graphs. So I mentioned alternative item types because these exams are computer-based. They have more than what we call the traditional multiple choice questions. A traditional multiple choice question is multiple choice single response. So you have A, B, C, and D, and only one of those options is correct, is the key. The computer-based exams have alternative item types. So there might be a multiple choice, multiple response. There's point and click, where think of this as the question has a graph and you have to click within a certain area on the graph. And so there's a buffer zone kind of keyed in there. And if you click within that buffer zone, your answer will be correct. And if you click outside of that buffer zone, then your answer will be incorrect. You can also think of perhaps there's a diagram of a retaining wall and you're meant to click on something, a certain area of that retaining wall. So that's what the point and click options are for. There's also drag and drop. Think of these as order of operation questions, or perhaps you're labeling a diagram. And so it will have the options available to you and you need to drag them and drop them into the appropriate places. And then there's also the fill in the blank question. And there's a link right there on the bottom of that slide. There's a video, it's about a 30-second video that you can go in and watch an example of each of these items. There's a question in the chat. Can you go back on previously answered questions, or once you answer, can you not go back? For the FE exam, it's a 6-hour exam. You sit for the entire 6 hours to take it. You can go back and forth throughout the exam. So you don't need to move chronologically through the questions. You can go back. You can flag items and go back to them later. So for the FE exam, as a computer-based exam, you get your results about a week after you sit for the exam. You will receive an email notification through your My NCEES account. You'll log in and the results will be available to you. If you pass, you will just get a notification that you passed. And if you fail, then you'll receive a diagnostic report similar to what is shown on the screen here that tells you the different knowledge areas and how well you did in those knowledge areas. So if you don't happen to pass this exam, then you will be able to use this diagnostic report to come back and figure out which areas that you may need to study. If you don't pass this exam, the first time that you take it, you do have more opportunities to sit for the exam. You can take the FE exam up to 3 times per year and once per quarter. So those are kind of the guidelines for retaking this exam. 3 times per year as a max and once per quarter. And here are the pass rates. And I apologize for the double % sign that just jumped off the screen at me. These are the pass rates for the FE exam. This is for people who took the exam for the first time and attended an ABET accredited engineering program and within 12 months of graduation. So you can see that the pass rates are all with around a 60%, some a bit higher, some a bit lower. But I would really encourage you to not use these exam pass rates to determine which discipline you want to take. Really need to look at those exam specifications and determine which exam you're going to be the most confident on. And then once you pass the FE exam, you may be eligible for an EIT certificate. So this is an engineer in training certificate. The only requirements in California are that you've taken and passed the FE exam and that you have at least 3 years of either engineering education or 3 years of engineering experience, or a combination of experience and education that totals 3 years. So if you are in your senior year of your engineering education, then you meet this requirement. And then once you have passed that FE exam, you can send an application, or excuse me, it's now online. So you can fill out an application on our online Connect system and receive your EIT certificate. Now, it's worth noting that an EIT certificate, it's not a license. Engineer in training is a title. So Dr. Q mentioned that we have those title acts. It's similar to that in that it's a title. You can use the title engineer in training. You can put EIT after your name, but it does not give you any legal authority to practice or offer to practice engineering. If you go the path of applying to waive the FE exam, you are not eligible for an EIT certificate. You do need to have passed that FE exam if you'd like to get an EIT certificate. For more information on the requirements and how to apply for an EIT certificate, I provided a link here. It is a $75 application fee, and the timeline for that certificate is about 1 to 2 weeks for California residents. The only reason we specifically put California residents, you do need to submit fingerprints or live scan when you apply for an EIT certificate or a license. And so in California, it's live scan, and outside of California, it's fingerprints. And so those sometimes take a bit longer to process. So that's the only reason why we specified 1 to 2 weeks for California residents. And before I move on to the PE exam, are there any questions about the FE exam or EIT certificate? It looks like Dr. Q was handling the questions in the chat, but if anyone has anything else, go ahead and unmute yourself. Is the EIT certificate valid for a lifetime? Yes and no. The EIT expires when you get your PE license, but other than that, it is valid and does not expire. Does the FE apply in all states? Yes, that's a great question. I was going to address that for the PE. The NCEES exams are recognized in all states. So if you take the FE exam in California, the other states will recognize that, and vice versa. Your exam results do not expire. The only caveat to that is if you take these exams and you get your license and then you allow your license to expire. If that's the case, if it's expired for more than 5 years, you will have to start the application and licensing process from the beginning, including taking these exams. But in terms of, is there a timeline from when you pass the exam to when you need to apply for licensure or obtain your license? There is not an expiration date on these exams. Minimum grade to pass. There is some information on how NCEES scores these exams that's available on their website. I don't know what the minimum grade is. That's something that's determined by NCEES. There's a committee that looks into that. So that's something that you can look at on NCEES's website.
Yeah, we don't
call international.
If I can
go ahead, Dr. Q.
NCEES doesn't refer to it as a minimum grade. There is what we call a passing score. And one of the things I always tell students is the FE and the PE exam are not like your exams in school. It doesn't matter whether you get for example, a 71 or a 91. It's a pass-fail exam. You don't need a perfect score. You just need to beat whatever the passing score is. And the passing score is dependent on the kinds of questions you get. So it's hard to give you a number. I think it's relatively safe to say if you can answer about 70% of the questions, you're in pretty good shape. You should not have any trouble. And that's what I always, when you're studying, that's how you want to study in terms of make sure you do the questions you can answer well first. You're focusing on getting that minimum number that you need.
Thank you, Dr. Q. A couple more questions. Will the most recent version of the reference book be used? Yes. So I will show you where you can access that reference book. And it's a good thing to look at that list of reference books to make sure that you're using the current version, because that is what will be on the exam. The FE, to waive the FE exam, that would depend on your education. Just to briefly go over that, if you have a bachelor's degree from an accredited program, you will need to demonstrate 15 years of experience to waive the FE exam. If you have a master's that's accredited, it would be 14 years, and a PhD is 12 months. If it's a non-accredited engineering program, it will be 17 years of experience. And that process is that you would apply for licensure, And when you get to the question that asks if you've passed the FE exam and if you've passed the PE exam, you would say no. And then a question will pop up that asks if you are applying to waive the FE exam. So the process would be as if you're applying for licensure. And then the work experience requirements are dependent on your engineering education. The FE exam is online. It is not in person. It's a computer-based exam, and you need to go to a Pearson VUE testing center in order to take the exam. And there's Pearson VUE testing centers in all 50 states and some countries, so that you should be able to find a test center. Is there a way to check exam dates and locations before checking out in my NCEES? I'm not sure of that process. I haven't actually had to register for one of these exams, but I believe I've had other people tell me that you can look at exam date and locations before checking out, but that's a question I'll have to defer to somebody who has taken the exam, or Dr. Q, do you know?
So the answer is you schedule when and where you take the exam. So once you're approved to take the exam, you look at what's available at the center that you want to take it at and pick an appropriate time. So it is possible, for example, if you wanted to go to a specific center, it may have all the slots that are available filled up, in which case you have to look to another location. But you get to choose the location and the time that you want to take.
I think the question is, can you look at the available dates and times before you finish paying for the exam?
The specifics of that, yeah, I don't know. You can actually ask that question directly of NCEES when you go onto their website.
Thank you. Does the 3 years start counting after passing the FE exam? No, for your EIT certificate, the experience does not need to be after you pass the FE exam. Is the EIT certificate a requirement to take the PE exam? The certificate is not, but you do need to have passed the FE exam. And I will go into that in a little bit. Can overseas experience be used to waive the FE exam? The answer is yes. There are some requirements. I do have a slide on that. The work experience requirements are the same for FE as it is for the PE in terms of what qualifies and what does not qualify, but international experience is acceptable as long as it meets the definition of civil engineering. Can I repeat what I said about the 5-year expiration? Yes, I kind of went quickly over that because it's a licensing expiration thing, but your FE and PE exam results do not expire. The only caveat to that is if you pass your exams, you apply to get licensed and are issued your license, and then you let your license expire. If your license is expired for 5 years or more, you will not be able to be reinstated your license. And so you would have to start the process for licensure all over again as if you are a brand new applicant. So in that situation, you may need to take those exams again. So food for thought, just don't let your license ever expire.
That's the key message. Never, once you've got your license, don't do anything to lose it.
Even if you think you're going to retire, I have 2 applicants right now actually who went into retirement and then came out of retirement, and their license was expired, and now they do have to go sit for these exams again. So just pay the renewal fees and keep it up to date. Does the passing score needed change for each test? These exams being computer-based exams, it's not the same set of 110 questions for every exam. It's kind of a loft type exam. There's a lot of information going into that, but the score, it may differ based on the questions that are on the exam, the difficulty. I guess there's statistics that go into it. And so the answer is no, but it's actually a very complicated response to that. Because
I would actually say the answer is probably yes. The way to think of it is each 110 questions that someone takes has a passing score associated with it. and the 110 that you see versus the 110 someone else sees may be different. So the passing score for the two are different. They're statistically, whether you have to get 70 right or 71 right on the two exams, statistically, we consider them equal strength at that point, but the actual number of correct answers can differ for each 110 set questions.
Great questions. I'm going to continue on with the presentation, but keep them coming. So we talked about the first step on this timeline for professional licensure. Now we're going to talk about the PE exam, the Principles and Practice of Engineering exam. And this exam reflects more real world practice. So while the FE exam is more testing your capabilities of finding the right equation, solving for X, finding the right graph or chart, and being able to use it to answer the question, this exam is discipline specific, and it is testing real world practice. As Dr. Q mentioned, as far as licensure, this exam is testing for minimal level of competency within a particular discipline. So if, unlike the FE exam, you will not be able to select any discipline for the PE exam. If you want to be licensed as a civil engineer, you must take the PE civil exam. So FE, any discipline, PE, it has to be the discipline that you are applying for licensure. These exams are developed by NCEES. They are developed by licensed civil engineers, if it's the PE civil exam, in all 50 states. There's a morning breadth section, an afternoon depth section, and the morning section is about 40 questions and the afternoon section is about 40 questions. In total, it will be 80 questions, and there are the same alternative item types that are on the FE exam. I'll get to the question in the chat in a minute. So you will be given 8 hours to sit for the exam, but the exam seat time is 9 hours. And then once you've passed the FE exam in California, that is the only requirement to take the PE exam, is that you've passed the FE exam. Once you've done that, you can log into your My NCS account and pay the fee to NCEES and register for this exam. This exam used to be paper-based, offered only in April and October. It is now computer-based. It started computer-based last year, and so it is now offered year-round at Pearson VUE testing centers.
For most of the engineering disciplines, not all of them. Some of the engineering disciplines that exam is offered only 2 times a year. One window in October or one window in April. Those are usually lower volume exams. The high volume exams like civil, mechanical, electrical, yes, they are year round.
Correct. That bullet point was specifically for the PE civil exam. That what started being offered computer-based in January 2022. Question in the chat. We don't need to verify non-US education if we have an advanced degree obtained in the US, correct? How about other states? In California, for your PE, for your license, we are interested in the highest degree. So you would not need to send transcripts for your undergraduate. You would just need to send the transcripts for your postgraduate. So that is correct. Other states, you'd have to contact other boards. They all have their own requirements for licensure. Is there minimum work experience required before taking the PE? No. In California, the only requirement for registering for the PE exam is that you have passed the FE exam. So you don't need to have a minimum number of work experience. You do not need to get prior approval from the board. You don't have to fill out an application. Once you've passed the FE exam, you can register for the PE exam. What is needed to renew your PE license? Are there any more tests? At this time, there are not any more tests. The only thing you need to do to renew your license is pay the renewal fee. So,
it should be noted the board is working on a test for renewals that will test changes to our laws So but it's not in place yet. That is a future exam that will happen at some point.
Brent, you need 6 years to take the PE if no degree. So I don't need the 6 years. I need to see where on NCEES it says that you need 6 years, but that is not a requirement for California. That could be for a different state. So if you wanted to take the PE exam, let's say in Illinois may have different requirements for sitting for the exam. Some states, they call it decoupling the experience from the exams. California allows you to take the PE exam regardless of the experience. So you just need to have passed the FE exam.
Also, be careful what you read on the NCEES site. They often base their information on what they call their model laws, which not every state, and especially not California, follow exactly. It's very important that if you want to know about the specifics of a requirement in terms of experience, go to the state that you're looking at and ask from them. Do not rely on answers from NCEES because they represent, I think, 69 different jurisdictions, each of whom has slight differences.
I'll answer the next couple of questions, and then I'll get on with the slides. Do you have to take the PE exam in multiple states if you want to have a license in multiple states? No. All the states use the FE and PE exam. So once you've passed the exam, you won't need to take it in another state if you want to get licensed in another state. You will need to make sure that you meet the requirements in those states as far as work experience, if there's any state exams that need to be taken. But as far as whether you need to retake the PE exam in Nevada, if you want to get licensed in Nevada, even though you took the exam in California, that is not the case. And then PhD, can I give the PE exam directly? That's an FE waiver question. You would need to apply to the board, apply to get licensed, mark that you're requesting to waive the FE exam, and you would need to wait until your application is approved and your request to waive the FE exam is approved, and then you can register for the PE exam. Okay, so let's dive into this PE exam. So the PE exam, I mentioned it has a morning section and an afternoon section. And the morning is called the breadth section. And these are the topics that are going to be tested on the morning 40-ish questions. So regardless of which afternoon discipline you register for, these will be the topics that will be tested on in that morning section. And we've provided handouts that have these exam specifications in more detail. So those will be or have been provided to you. And then your afternoon module, the depth section of that exam. There are 5 different options. There's construction, geotechnical, structural, transportation, water resources, and environmental. You do need to select which one of these afternoon modules you are going to take when you register for the exam. So it is very important that you either click on the link at the bottom of this slide, go to the handout, go to NCEES's website, and look at the discipline-specific exam specifications. I just want to caution you, this group is very focused. I would imagine you're mostly into the geotechnical or structural areas, but just make sure you look at these exam specifications, because although you may have focused on structural classes in college, that doesn't necessarily mean that the information that was covered in your structural classes aligns with the topics that are tested on the structural portion of this exam. So don't make an assumption based on your education or your experience. I would really, really encourage you to look at those exam specifications when selecting which exam you want to take. It doesn't matter which of the 5 afternoon modules you take, you will have passed the PE civil exam. So if you are interested in getting licensed down the road as a structural engineer after you have obtained your civil engineer license, that does not mean that you have to take the structural afternoon portion of this exam. A good example is myself. Right when I was taking this exam, I was working in land development, doing a lot of drainage, flood management type work. So I thought I was going to take the water resources afternoon module, but 50% of that exam was environmental. engineering, and that is not something that I am comfortable being tested on. So I ended up taking a different afternoon module because that the topics did not align with my knowledge. So look at those exam specifications, and again, they have been provided to you and they are available on the website. Now that the PE civil exam is computer-based, as well as most of the other PE exams, it is no longer open book. So as a paper and pencil exam, you could bring in as many references as you wanted to, as long as they were bound. Now it is closed book, but you will be provided a PE reference handbook. And similar to the FE reference handbook, this is something that will be available to you electronically as a searchable PDF during the exam, and it is available for free download through your My NCEES account. The PE civil exam has many design codes and standards that are required. And so because you cannot bring those into the testing center, those will also be provided to you on exam day as searchable electronic PDF files only on exam day. So the PE reference handbook is available before as a free download. The design codes and standards are not available to you unless you have access to them personally or through an employer. Those will only be available to you on exam day. And then NCEES also has practice exams, both digital and printed, for the PE exams. They are discipline specific based on the afternoon modules. There are 100 questions. They provide the solutions, and there is a discount if you register for the PE and order a practice exam at the same time. So here is that reference handbook, and I have a quick video on the reference handbook and the design codes and standards. I think it's important. It allows you to see how the exam is formatted in a computer-based structure. It's similar for the FE exam, except there's not the design codes and standards. So it'll be a split screen. You'll have your reference handbook on the left-hand side and your exam questions on the right-hand side. See if it's going to work. Oh, there it goes.
In addition to the
Oh, sorry. We'll go here.
In addition to the NCEES reference handbook, the computer-based PE civil exams will include access to a library of design codes and standards. To use the design code library, click the Design Codes and Standards tab on the left side of the screen. Some larger files will be separated into chapters for optimal exam performance. Click on a title to open the file. Only one file can be opened at a time. You can search for words and phrases or click on linked bookmarks to navigate the file. The PE Civil Exam specifications on ncees.org list the codes and standards that will be provided to you on exam day.
Okay. So I do, while I'm out of the, sorry, slide it back over here.
Phone charging slowly? This is the fastest phone charger on the market.
Sorry.
There's a 90% chance your phone is already infected with this.
Okay. So while I am away from the presentation, I do want to show you where to access some of this information that we've talked about. So if you're on the NCEES website, you can click on engineering here up at the top and then scroll down to the bottom to where it says learn about the exams. And here's where you can select the FE exam or the PE exam. If you select FE exam, this will take you to a page that has a lot of information that's also included in our handout. But you can scroll down here and click on the different exam specifications, which will open as a PDF. And then you can also look into the exam scoring process and see the pass rates for the FE exam. If you go to the bottom and click on the PE exam, again, these are all of the exams that are offered by NCEES. If you want to be licensed as a civil engineer, you do need to take the PE civil exam. And so this page on NCEES's website will give you all the information you need to know about the PE exam. It has these exam specifications and design standards. So if we select one of them, just so you can see what that video is showing, here is the PE civil exam specifications if you're taking the structural depth section. So here it shows, you can see it goes into a bit more detail on what topics are going to be tested on, as well as the number of questions. And that morning breadth section is going to be areas 1 through, I think it's 8. Yeah, 1 through 8. So from site development and up, those are the topics that are tested on in the morning section, regardless of the afternoon section that you take. So every exam specification will have sections 1 through 8 on there. And then after site development is where you're going to start seeing the questions that are specific to whatever afternoon module that you selected. So this again is the structural afternoon module. So you can see the level of detail that it gives you as to what is going to be tested on. And then if you scroll to the last pages of the exam specifications, this is where it's going to list what design standards and codes will be needed for this exam and will be provided to you as searchable PDFs on the day of the exam. So for the structural afternoon portion, these are the design standards and codes that will be provided to you. So it is important to become familiar with these prior to sitting for the exam. Now, let me see here for a second. I'm going to put this on the other side of the screen just for a second. I'm going to log in. It logged me out to my NCEES account, so I can show you where you will access those reference handbooks, and then we will move on. Sorry, it's my personal email, so I don't want to have it there on the screen. Okay. So here, if you have a NCEES account, this is your dashboard, and this is where you will register for an exam, purchase your practice exams, you'll access your results. Here you can look at the exam day policies, calculator policy, and if you click here on View Reference Handbook, these are all of the reference handbooks that are available for free download, simply with an email address and a NCEES account. So this is where you will get that FE reference handbook, and then the PE Civil Reference Handbook. And if you click on that, it will download the PDF. I do have them open here, so you can see the FE Reference Handbook is just over 500 pages. And you can see the contents that are over here on the side. But again, it's just the equations, charts, graphs, and figures. There's not going to be example problems. There's not going to be a lot of dialogue about how to use these equations. And the same goes for the PE Civil Reference Handbook, just under 500 pages. And again, if you're looking at those contents, the contents are going to match the information that is on those exam specifications. But it also, again, is just equations, charts, graphs, and figures. And all afternoon disciplines are included in this reference handbook. All right, let's get back to the PowerPoint.
The NCEES Reference Handbook.
Okay. Let's see. So how to approach the PE. I could also caution you that this is how you could, or tell you this is how you can approach the FE exam as well. Look at those exam specifications, know your references and standards, become familiar with them ahead of time. The more you can manage your time and be efficient moving through those references, the more successful you will be on these exams. The 4-pass method, it's just one option for how to work through the items. As Dr. Q mentioned for the FE exam, it's the more questions you get right, the better you will do on this exam. You don't need to get the hard ones correct. They're all scored the same. And so being able to move through the exam and answer as many quickly and confidently as you can, and then work back through them to do the rest of the questions. Study with the calculator you can use on the exam. There are only certain question or certain calculators that can be used. So study with that. And then there was a study done that says you need about 200 to 300 hours of study time to be successful on this exam. I've provided some links for some other resources for computer-based exam, I would encourage you to click on these and go through them as you approach your exam day. Here we have some pass rates. These are the computer-based exam pass rates. Again, looking at those exam specifications rather than pass rates to choose which exam you want to take. You will receive your results a week after you take the exam, 7 to 10 days after you take the exam. And just like the FE exam, if you don't happen to pass, you will receive a diagnostic report showing you how well you did or how well you did not do in certain areas. And you can use this to study for the next exam. And again, 3 times per year, once per quarter is how often you can take this exam. We are reaching the end of the time and we've had a lot of questions in the chat. So I'm just we have only a couple slides left. Keep the questions coming in the chat though. So again, looking at this timeline, we've talked about the first half of the timeline, the FE exam and the PE exam. Really what the remaining information you need to know before applying to the board is the work experience portion of this. And so the requirements for licensure in California to be licensed as a civil engineer is that you've taken and passed the FE exam, you've taken and passed the PE exam, and then you need to demonstrate 6 years or more of qualifying engineering experience. And this can be done through experience only, 6 years of experience, or it can be done through education and experience. And so the way that we count engineering education for experience credit is if you have a bachelor's degree from a non-ABET accredited program, you will receive 2 years of experience credit. So you would only need the 4 years of work experience. If you have a bachelor's from an ABET accredited program, we will give 4 years of experience credit. And then if you have a master's or a PhD from a board approved program, you will receive 5 years of experience credit and only need 1 additional year of work experience. So again, this is for the work experience portion of the application. So you don't need your work experience to take that PE exam. The work experience does need to be gained after your graduation for your bachelor's degree. So whatever date is on your transcripts, that is the earliest that you can start counting work experience for your license. It does need to meet the definition of civil engineering. The slide that Dr. Q went over with all the different disciplines that we license in California, those all have legal definitions. So whatever license you're applying for, the work experience does need to meet that discipline. We do accept out of state and out of country work experience, but your references do need to be licensed civil engineers. I forget, Dr. Q, is this yours or is this mine?
This one's yours.
Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to get through the last couple. So just some important things to remember. A license is required to practice or offer to practice engineering, surveying, geology, and geophysics. We license individuals. You are in responsible charge of your own work under your license. The board is here to protect the public, not promote the profession. And just because an engineer does something doesn't mean that it's engineering. There are legal definitions. I'm going to pass that for right now. Please subscribe to our email list. You'll receive information about laws, regulations. Here's my contact information. Again, I'm blowing through this because you'll have a copy of these. And this is you, Dr. Q.
All right. So we touched on some of these earlier, but I do want to stress every state has its own rules. Just because California does it one way doesn't mean another state will do it exactly the same way. So if you plan to get licensed in a state other than California, you definitely need to check out that state's particular requirements. One of the examples I'll give you, many of the states now allow you to take the PE exam without having a minimum amount of experience yet. That is not true for every state in the US. There are still some states that require you to complete the experience before you take the exam. And you need to be careful, especially for your first license, if you're applying to one of those states, because they may say, no, you took this out of order, we won't count it. So you got to be careful about that. Like I said, it's not a lot, but there are still some out there. The other thing to keep in mind is that once you have your first license, the second state you want to go to after that, usually we'll do it through what we call comity or reciprocity. What that generally means is you don't have to take the exams over unless there's a special state exam. California, for example, in civil, you have to have the civil structural and the civil seismic and survey are extra exams you have to take. So in my case, I took my first PE exam, my only PE exam, when I lived in Vermont, and that's where I got my license first. So when I moved back to California, I got credit for my Vermont PE in terms of the 8-hour exam, but I did have to take the 2 state exams before I could get my license in California. And so that's what I mean by it's not seamless and it's not automatic. Some states have easy processes. You know, there are a few out there that I've seen that will say that if you've been licensed for 10 years, haven't been disciplined or anything, you just get it. All you have to do is apply. Other states will ask you to complete all the application materials, provide references, all of that stuff, even though you've passed the exam. So if you're going to do that, just make sure you go and check out what that state has. And then there was a question about things that come after PE. In California, we don't require continuing education to maintain your PE. But in other states, you absolutely have to put in 15 hours, usually per year, of professional development to continue to maintain. And so those are the kinds of things you want to research when you go through this process and determine where you're going to get it. I will tell you from a professional standpoint, having worked with a number of folks who work in structural and geotech, if you end up in the consulting business, your disciplines tend to get multiple licenses, because if you're part of a big enough company, they will work across multiple states and they will want you to be licensed in each of those states. So I know people who proudly proclaim they have 20, 30 states for which they are licensed. And so that is a thing out there. If you stay in California and if you work primarily in California, you probably won't need to, but keep that in mind as you go down through your careers. And with that, I think that concludes the formal part of the presentation. Both Natalie and I are happy to stick around as long as you'd like to answer questions.
And I apologize for going a few minutes over, but you guys had great questions, so thank you. Will full-time summer internship during a master's study usually count as work experience for a license? Full-time work experience after your bachelor's degree may qualify as long as it meets the definition of civil engineering. Yes.
I know there was a question earlier in the chat about doing using research work that you've done at the university as experience. And my experience was I got to use that in Vermont, and I will tell you what happened with me. I was a graduate student in California, so the experience was in California, but used with my Vermont application. They actually gave me credit for my teaching experience, my teaching assistantships, but not my research assistantships. So take that with it. So realize that every state will look at those things differently. You know, I was surprised. I thought they would. I would have guessed the other way around, but they considered teaching assistantships, graduate teaching assistantships as qualifying experience, but not research.
Let's see. FE waiver requirement. So an FE waiver, the process is that you will apply for licensure. So you will go onto our board website, you will go to the Connect website, you'll fill out an application for licensure. On one of the tabs, the qualifications tab, the first question will ask, have you passed the FE exam? When you select no, an additional question will pop up asking if you are requesting to waive the FE exam, and you will say yes and complete the application for the rest of the application, as if you're applying for licensure. The requirements for the FE waiver, I'm typing it up in the chat, so it'll be available for you, but it depends on your education. If you have a bachelor's degree from a non-accredited program, you will need to demonstrate 17 years of work experience in addition to that education. If you have a bachelor's degree from an ABET accredited program, you will need to demonstrate 15 years of work experience. If you have a master's degree from a board approved program, then it is 14 years of experience. And if you have a PhD from a board approved engineering program, then it will be 12 months of experience. That being said, I very much encourage you to take the FE exam. It will provide you with an example with some practice for sitting for these NCEES exams. It will help prepare you for the PE exam. Also, the FE exam is available 365 days out of the year. You can go onto NCEES's website, register, pay, and pick a date. You won't be able to waive the FE exam and sit for the PE exam until your application is approved. So the process is much longer than if you just go sit for the FE exam. But there is options for waiving that exam. I will say that getting 14 to 17 years of work experience approved is much harder. It requires a lot more detail than if you have passed the FE exam, and now we're just looking at the requirements for licensure, which is 6 years of experience, anywhere from 12 months to 4 years, depending on your education.
Natalie, there's a couple of questions in the chat that I think we can maybe clarify. If you can expand on how the degrees offset the experience if they're not in the US. For example, if the bachelor's degree was a foreign degree, but the master's and the PhD are from an accredited program here, what happens to that ratio of experience versus education?
Yeah, great question. And sorry, we went over that quickly because the focus was FE and PE, but if you have an overseas non-accredited bachelor's degree, but you have a master's or PhD that is accredited or board approved, we're looking at that highest level, that higher degree. So if you are going to claim your master's degree, and you provide transcripts for your master's degree, we will give you 5 years of experience credit, and you only need 1 year of work experience credit. And so you don't even have to have, if you've passed the FE exam, you don't even have to have a bachelor's in engineering. You could have a master's in engineering or a PhD in engineering that is board approved, and you will still get that 5 years. So we're looking at the degree, the highest degree that you wish to claim for experience credit.
All right, if that didn't answer the questions in the chat, let us know. I think we answered a couple of ones I saw in there. I know there was one question someone asked earlier that I was not able to answer, that Natalie was the only one who really could answer. Did we answer that question?
I did in the chat.
You may have. I just wanted to make sure.
It was a question about if I'm using my master's for licensure in California, will any research or teaching experience during a PhD account for the 12-month experience requirement? And now that I read it out loud, I've answered part of that. Research does not qualify as qualifying work experience unless, well, research for your thesis or dissertation does not qualify in California. If it's research that is on a specific project that requires that a licensed civil engineer be in responsible charge of the work, then it may qualify. But a lot of times research that's done at colleges and universities don't require that somebody be licensed because it's research. So in California, for the work to qualify, it does need to be related to a specific project, and it does require that a licensed civil engineer be in responsible charge. Teaching experience, sometimes qualifies, I'm choosing my words carefully. There is a section in Board Rule 424 that says that we can, at the board's discretion, accept engineering teaching as work experience, but there's also, if you read on in 424, it says that the combination of education and teaching that we are accepting for experience credit cannot count for more than 5 years. So if you're claiming a master's degree or a PhD, we are going to already grant you 5 years of experience credit. So any engineering teaching would not qualify. And engineering teaching, that's something that if you're going to claim a bachelor's degree or a non-accredited bachelor's degree, or maybe no education at all, the teaching has to be at a level for licensure. So if you're just teaching intro, statics and dynamics classes or strength and materials classes, that's not going to qualify. We're looking at upper division, graduate level courses that you would be teaching. So I would just say don't count on your teaching experience to qualify, because there's very specific rules about when we would accept that or not. So I hope that answered that question.
Yeah, I guess we don't have any questions anymore in the chat. So thank you so much, Natalie. Thank you so much, Dr. Qureshi, for joining us and helping us in this session. And thank you for staying 10 minutes more to answer the questions as well. So if anybody has any more questions, they can mail Natalie. They already have email. We will send you the slides and handouts in the email, so look out for that. And yeah, I guess that's it.
Great. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure. Yeah.
This was so great, guys. So much knowledge, so little time, but so much knowledge. You guys are an asset. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Feel free to email us if you have more questions.
Or if you want us to do any more.
Amazing. Thank you, guys. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday afternoon.
All right, you too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.